Welcome to the story of Daniel. This narrative is based on the Bible and has been recreated with artificial intelligence. Chapter 1. Captivity in Babylon. The sun set on Jerusalem, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and red. But the beauty of the heavens did little to lift the heavy hearts of its inhabitants. The imposing Babylonian army, under the command of King Nebuchadnezzar, had laid siege to the city, and now the consequences of that conquest were becoming starkly evident. Among the spoils of this victory were the brightest and best of Jerusalem's young men, chosen for their nobility, intelligence, and potential. They were to be indoctrinated into the ways of the Babylonians, trained to serve in the king's palace. Among these chosen few was a young man named Daniel and his 3 close friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The 4 youths were ripped away from their homeland, their families, and their faith. The journey to Babylon was long and arduous, filled with uncertainty. Whispers of the grandeur and might of Babylon filled the air, but to these young men, the tales were cold comfort. They were entering a land of paganism, a stark contrast to the monotheistic beliefs they held dear. Upon arrival, the imposing walls of Babylon, the grandeur of its ziggurats, and the opulence of the royal palace were both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The city was a testament to the might of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Ashpenaz, the chief eunuch and master of the king's servants, was given the task of overseeing the Israelite captives' integration. Part of this process was to give them new names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah was renamed Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azariah was dubbed Abednego. These names, rooted in the Babylonian pantheon, were meant to erase their Hebrew identity and assimilate them into Babylonian culture. But the Babylonians wanted more than just a name change. They aimed to reshape the very minds and bodies of these young men. A rich diet of the king's meat and wine was prescribed to them, meant to nourish them for their service. But Daniel, ever faithful to the laws of his God, requested that they be allowed to consume only vegetables and water for 10 days. It was a risk, defying the commands of their captors, but it was a stand Daniel was willing to take for his beliefs. To Ashpenaz's surprise, after 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and more nourished than those who had partaken in the king's rich foods. Seeing this, the chief eunuch allowed them to continue with their chosen diet. In their studies, too, the young men excelled. They were taught the language, literature, and sciences of the Babylonians, and in all areas they showcased exceptional aptitude. Their dedication and prowess did not go unnoticed. As the months turned to years, they found favor with their teachers, and their reputation grew. Yet, amid the splendors of Babylon and the praise of their captors, the hearts of Daniel and his friends remained anchored to their faith and the God of their forefathers. In a foreign land, surrounded by unfamiliar customs and beliefs, their unwavering faith was both their shield and their compass. As the chapter closed, the stage was set for these young men, particularly Daniel, to play pivotal roles in the annals of Babylon, showcasing the power and faithfulness of the God they served. Chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar's Dream. Night had fallen over Babylon, with the sprawling city illuminated by countless torches that reflected off the waters of the Euphrates. Within the heart of the city, in the grand palace of Nebuchadnezzar, the mighty king lay restless on his bed. He had dreamt a dream that greatly troubled him, its imagery unsettling and its meaning elusive. Come morning, his agitation was palpable. Nebuchadnezzar summoned his magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, demanding they not only interpret the dream but also recount it to him. The wise men of Babylon were perplexed. "Tell us the dream," they implored, "and we shall interpret it." But the king's edict was unwavering. He doubted their abilities and perhaps their sincerity, and believed that if they truly had the supernatural insight they claimed, they should be able to both describe and interpret the dream. He threatened them with death and the destruction of their households should they fail, and conversely promised them wealth and honor if they succeeded. The wise men protested, arguing that what the king asked was impossible. No one could recount the dream without being told it first. Their pleas and excuses only infuriated Nebuchadnezzar further. In his anger, he ordered the execution of all wise men in Babylon. The decree was sweeping and brutal. Daniel and his friends, despite their innocence in the matter, were also slated for execution as part of the king's orders. Upon hearing the news, Daniel, with characteristic calmness and wisdom, approached Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, seeking clarity on why such a hasty decree had been given. After Arioch explained the situation, Daniel, driven by a mix of courage and faith, requested an audience with the king. He sought time, promising to deliver the interpretation the king so desperately sought. Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps desperate for an answer or impressed by Daniel's audacity, granted the request. Daniel returned to his house and shared everything with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Together they prayed fervently to the God of heaven, seeking mercy and insight into the king's dream. Their prayers were heartfelt, filled with desperation and hope. That night, in a vision, the mystery was revealed to Daniel. Overwhelmed with gratitude, he blessed the God of heaven, praising him for his wisdom and might. With the dream and its meaning now clear in his mind, Daniel was prepared to stand before the most powerful man in the known world. As dawn broke, he approached Arioch and urged him to halt the executions, declaring that he was ready to interpret the king's dream. Brought before Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel was clear in stating that it wasn't his own power or wisdom that allowed him to see the dream and its meaning, but it was the God of heaven who revealed secrets. He then proceeded to describe the grand statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream, made of various materials, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, and the stone that destroyed it. He provided the interpretation, speaking of the succession of kingdoms that the statue represented, and the everlasting kingdom of God symbolized by the stone. The king, awestruck by Daniel's clarity and the divine power he witnessed, fell prostrate before him. He praised the God of Daniel, declaring him to be the true God of gods and Lord of kings. Nebuchadnezzar then rewarded Daniel handsomely and placed him in a high position, while Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were appointed administrators over Babylon. In a city known for its splendors and mysteries, the most wondrous mystery of all was the faith and devotion of 4 young Hebrews and their unwavering trust in the God of heaven. Chapter 3. Fiery Furnace. The grandeur of Babylon was often on display, but never more so than on the day King Nebuchadnezzar erected a massive golden statue on the plain of Dura. It stood 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, a gleaming testament to the king's might and the empire's splendor. Yet its purpose was not mere decoration or tribute. It served as a beacon of loyalty and worship. A decree was issued. When the royal musicians played, every citizen, regardless of their nationality or faith, was to bow down and worship this golden image. Those who defied the edict would face a terrifying punishment. They would be thrown into a blazing furnace. As the clarion call of horns, flutes, and lyres filled the air, a vast sea of people sank to their knees, their shadows stretching long in the sun. The plain of Dura was a mosaic of prostration, but amid this vast tableau, 3 figures stood defiantly upright: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their refusal to bow did not go unnoticed. Certain Chaldeans, perhaps envious of the favor these Hebrews had found in the court, brought their defiance to the king's attention. Filled with fury, Nebuchadnezzar summoned the trio. His voice, cold and imperious, offered them a second chance. "When you hear the music, if you're ready to fall down and worship the image I made, all will be well. But if you don't, you'll be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God who shall deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their resolve unwavering, responded with a calm assurance that startled even the king. "Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he doesn't know this, O king, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you've set up." Nebuchadnezzar's face contorted with rage. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Soldiers from his army bound Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, still in their tunics, trousers, and turbans. The furnace's flames roared with such intensity that they consumed the soldiers who approached to cast the Hebrews inside. Yet, as the king gazed into the blazing inferno, his anger turned to astonishment. Instead of 3, he saw 4 figures walking freely within the fire, untouched by the flames. And the 4th, he whispered in awe, was like a son of the gods. Realizing the miraculous protection bestowed upon the 3 Hebrews, Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace's mouth, calling for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to emerge. When they did, Not a hair on their heads was singed, their clothes were unharmed, and there was no smell of fire on them. Witnessing this undeniable miracle, Nebuchadnezzar praised the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had sent an angel to protect his servants. The king issued a decree that anyone speaking against their God would be cut to pieces, for no other God could save like this. In the heart of Babylon, in the face of certain death, 3 Hebrews had demonstrated a faith more potent than the fiercest flames, and their deliverance was a testament to a power far greater than even the mighty Nebuchadnezzar could command. Chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar's Madness. The grand city of Babylon bore witness to the feats of many rulers, but none were as grandiose or proud as Nebuchadnezzar. His rule extended to the vast reaches of the known world, and his architectural marvels, like the Hanging Gardens, were sights to behold. Yet for all his worldly achievements, a divine lesson awaited the mighty king. One night, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that deeply unsettled him. At the heart of this dream stood a colossal tree, its top touching the heavens and visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were lush and its fruit abundant, providing sustenance for all. Beneath it, the beasts of the field found shade, and the birds of the sky nested in its branches. But as Nebuchadnezzar watched, a messenger, a holy one, descended from heaven, proclaiming, "Chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from beneath it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump bound with iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth." The dream shifted, and the voice continued, "Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal, till 7 times pass by for him." Nebuchadnezzar awoke with a start. The images from his dream lingered, dark and foreboding. He summoned his wise men, but none could interpret the vision. Remembering the young Hebrew who had once deciphered his troubling dream, Nebuchadnezzar called for Daniel. Upon hearing the dream, Daniel was silent, his thoughts heavy. Seeing the prophet's distress, Nebuchadnezzar urged him to speak forthrightly. Daniel began, "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries." He explained that the towering tree, providing for all, symbolized Nebuchadnezzar himself, and the divine decree to cut it down signaled a fall from power. The transformation into a beastly state was a warning. Unless Nebuchadnezzar recognized the supreme power of the Most High, who gave kingdoms to whom he wished, he would be driven away from people, living as a wild animal. Daniel pleaded with the king, urging him to renounce his sins and show kindness to the oppressed. Perhaps, he said, God would have mercy. Yet a year later, as Nebuchadnezzar walked on the roof of his palace and beheld the magnificence of Babylon, pride consumed him. "Is not this the great Babylon I have built by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" he declared. The words had barely left his lips when a voice from heaven responded, echoing the dream's warning. Nebuchadnezzar's sanity unraveled. He was driven away from his palace and began to live like a beast, his hair growing wild and his nails like birds' claws. For 7 seasons, the mighty ruler of Babylon roamed the fields, consumed by madness. But in time, when he finally lifted his eyes to heaven, his sanity was restored. He praised and exalted the God of heaven, acknowledging his eternal dominion over all kingdoms. Returning to his palace, Nebuchadnezzar's reign continued, but with a newfound humility. He extolled the Most High, admitting that all his power and achievements were nothing in the face of God's eternal authority. In the heart of Babylon, amidst the grandeur of its palaces and the brilliance of its gardens, the greatest lesson was neither of gold nor stone, but of humility and the transcendent power of the divine. Chapter 5. The Writing on the Wall. The throne room of Babylon's palace echoed with laughter and music. Belshazzar, now king and Nebuchadnezzar's successor, held a grand feast for 1,000 of his lords. Wine flowed freely, and the atmosphere was charged with the energy of celebration. In his revelry and under the influence of wine, Belshazzar sought to make a brazen statement. He ordered the golden and silver vessels that his predecessor Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought to him. These sacred cups, once used in the holy rites of the temple, were now used by Belshazzar and his guests to toast their gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. But as the celebration reached its height, a supernatural occurrence gripped the hall. Out of nowhere, fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster wall of the palace. The king watched, his face turning pale, his thoughts in turmoil, and his knees knocking together in sheer terror. The writing was mysterious, a string of unfamiliar characters, mene, tekel, upharsin. In his desperation, Belshazzar called for his enchanters, astrologers, and diviners, promising to clothe the one who could interpret the writing in purple, present them with a gold chain, and make them the third highest ruler in the kingdom. But none could decipher the strange inscription. The commotion reached the ears of the queen, who remembered a man during Nebuchadnezzar's reign known for his divine wisdom and ability to interpret dreams. She suggested Daniel, and the king summoned him post-haste. As Daniel stood before Belshazzar, he first reminded the king of Nebuchadnezzar's hubris and his humbling by the Almighty. Despite witnessing these events, Belshazzar had not humbled his own heart, and had instead defiled the sacred vessels from Jerusalem's temple. Turning to the enigmatic message on the wall, Daniel began to unravel its meaning. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, upharsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. As Belshazzar absorbed the gravity of the interpretation, he still kept his promise. He adorned Daniel in purple, placed a gold chain around his neck, and proclaimed him the third highest ruler in the kingdom. But the prophecy was swift in its fulfillment. That very night, the mighty Babylon, believed to be impregnable, was invaded. Belshazzar was slain, and Darius the Mede took control of the kingdom. The festivities had begun with opulent pride, but they ended with the somber realization that earthly grandeur is transient and divine judgment is inevitable for those who defy the Almighty. Chapter 6. Daniel in the Lion's Den. The reign of Darius the Mede brought a reshuffling of administrative powers. Recognizing Daniel's exceptional qualities, Darius intended to set him over the entire kingdom. Such a decision was not taken kindly by the other administrators and satraps, who grew envious of Daniel's favor with the king. Seeking grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, they scoured every aspect of his administrative duties. Yet they could find no corruption in him, for he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Their only chance, they realized, would be to use Daniel's devout faith against him. The conspirators devised a malicious plan. They approached King Darius with a suggestion. Let a decree be issued that for 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. The decree, once signed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, could not be revoked. Darius, perhaps flattered or not seeing through their scheme, put the decree in writing. Unperturbed by this new law, Daniel continued his daily ritual. With his windows open towards Jerusalem, he got down on his knees 3 times a day, giving thanks and praying to his God, just as he had always done. His actions were soon reported to the king by the envious officials. Darius, realizing the trap he'd been led into, was deeply distressed. He tried to find a way to save Daniel, but the law was unyielding. Reluctantly, the king gave the order, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Darius, with a heavy heart, said to him, "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you." A stone was placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his signet ring and those of his nobles, ensuring that no one would intervene on Daniel's behalf. That night, Darius could neither eat nor sleep. At the first light of dawn, he hurried to the lion's den. With an anxious heart, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" A calm voice answered from the depths, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight." Overjoyed, Darius ordered Daniel to be lifted out of the den. No harm had come to him because he had trusted in his God. The king then commanded that the men who had falsely accused Daniel be thrown into the lion's den, along with their families. The lions, showing no mercy, overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations of the world, "I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and he endures forever." In the very heart of an empire that worshipped many gods, the steadfast faith of one man shone brilliantly, bearing testament to the unmatched power and protection of the one true God. Chapter 7. Daniel's Vision of Four Beasts. During the first year of King Belshazzar's reign in Babylon, Daniel experienced a dream and visions that both amazed and troubled him. In this dream, he found himself standing on the shores of a great sea, churning with chaotic waves stirred by the winds from all directions. Out of the tempestuous waters, four great beasts emerged, each more terrifying than the last. The first beast, resembling a lion but with the wings of an eagle, it soared. As Daniel watched, the wings were torn off, and the creature was lifted from the ground. It stood on 2 feet like a man, and a human heart replaced its own. The second beast, reminiscent of a bear, it lumbered to one side, mouth filled with 3 ribs. A voice commanded, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." The third beast, looking like a leopard, this creature possessed 4 wings on its back and 4 heads, indicating great authority and dominion. The fourth beast, terrifying and fierce, this beast defied description. It had large iron teeth and 10 horns. As Daniel studied the horns, a smaller one sprouted, displacing 3 of the original horns. This small horn possessed human eyes and a boastful mouth. As Daniel grappled with the startling imagery of these creatures, his vision shifted to a heavenly court. Thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. Flames issued from his throne with a river of fire flowing out. Legions of heavenly beings attended him, and the court convened for judgment. The fourth beast, particularly the small horn with its boastful words, caught Daniel's attention. As he watched, the creature was slain and its body thrown into the blazing fire. Following this, in the clouds of heaven, Daniel saw someone like a son of man coming. He was presented before the Ancient of Days and was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom that would never be destroyed. People of every nation would serve him. Deeply disturbed by these visions, Daniel approached an angelic bystander seeking understanding. The angel explained that the 4 beasts symbolized 4 kingdoms that would rise from the earth. However, the saints of the Most High would eventually receive the everlasting kingdom. The interpretation especially focused on the 4th beast, representing a kingdom different from the preceding ones. The 10 horns indicated 10 kings, and the boastful horn that followed was another king, different and more powerful than his predecessors. This king would wage war against God's holy people and attempt to change sacred laws. But his power would be temporary, and he would be judged. Awakening from this profound vision, Daniel's spirit was troubled and his face pale. He recorded the dream and its interpretation but kept it to himself, pondering the immense implications of what he had seen and the destiny of kingdoms yet to come. Chapter 8. The Ram and the Goat. 2 years after his vision of the 4 beasts, Daniel found himself amidst another revelation. This time the setting was the citadel of Susa in the province of Elam, by the river Ulai. Standing by the water, Daniel noticed a ram with 2 high horns, one of which was longer than the other, though the longer one grew later. With no animals able to stand against it, the ram did as it pleased, charging west, north and south, exerting its dominance. Suddenly from the west, a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes appeared. Racing across the surface of the earth without touching it, the goat charged the ram with furious force. Stricken with rage, the goat shattered the ram's 2 horns, and the ram had no power to stand against it. The goat became exceedingly great, but at the height of its power, its large horn broke, and in its place 4 conspicuous horns grew towards the 4 winds of heaven. From one of these horns, a smaller horn emerged. It grew powerfully to the south and the east, and towards the beautiful land. It grew so high that it reached the stars, casting some of them and their host down to the earth and trampling upon them. The horn even challenged the prince of the heavenly host, halting the daily sacrifices and desecrating the sanctuary. As Daniel tried to comprehend the vision, he overheard 2 holy beings discussing it. One posed the question, how long will the vision concerning the daily sacrifice apply, and the desolation of the sanctuary and the host be trampled? The reply came, it will take 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. Seeking understanding, Daniel found himself in the presence of the angel Gabriel, whom he had seen in his earlier vision. Commanded by a voice to make Daniel understand, Gabriel approached him, causing Daniel to fall face down in deep sleep. Awakening him, Gabriel began to explain. Daniel, the vision concerns the time of the end. The ram with 2 horns represented the kings of Media and Persia, and the goat was the king of Greece, with the prominent horn between its eyes being the first king. The breaking of the horn and the emergence of the 4 others signified that the Grecian Empire would be broken up and divided into 4 territories. The small horn that grew was a wicked king, master of intrigue, who would rise to power, challenge the heavenly forces, and desecrate the holy temple. Daniel, though now understanding, remained deeply affected by the vision, leaving him exhausted and sick for days. He later resumed his duties with the king, but kept the vision to himself, still trying to grasp its full implications for the future of his people and the world. Chapter 9. The 70 Weeks. As years passed and the grip of Babylon on the exiled Israelites began to weaken, Daniel's thoughts turned to the prophecies of Jeremiah. He was keenly aware of Jeremiah's prediction that the desolation of Jerusalem would last for 70 years. With the nearing end of this period, Daniel, dressed in sackcloth and ashes, turned to prayer and fasting, seeking God's mercy. With deep humility, he began his prayer by acknowledging God's great mercy and the faithfulness of his covenant. Daniel confessed the sins of his people, admitting that they had turned away from God's commands. He spoke of the calamities that had befallen them, not as a result of God's unfaithfulness, but because of their own disobedience. Jerusalem, God's city, lay in ruins, a testament to their sins. Daniel pleaded with God to turn his anger and wrath away from Jerusalem. He appealed not based on the righteousness of his people, but on God's great mercy. "O Lord, listen. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hear and act. For your sake, my God, do not delay, because your city and your people bear your name," he implored. Even as Daniel was still praying, the angel Gabriel, whom Daniel had seen in his earlier vision, came swiftly to him. Gabriel informed Daniel that he had been sent to give him insight and understanding. "As soon as you began to pray, a word went out which I have come to tell you," Gabriel said. Gabriel then revealed to Daniel one of the most intricate and debated prophecies in the scriptures, the prophecy of the 70 weeks. 70 sevens are decreed for your people and your holy city," Gabriel began. These sevens were periods of 7 years, amounting to a total of 490 years. The prophecy foretold significant events. The decree to rebuild Jerusalem. From the issuing of this decree until the arrival of the Messiah, the Prince, there would be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. Jerusalem would be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. The coming of the Messiah. After the 62 sevens, the Messiah would be cut off, but not for himself. The destruction of Jerusalem. The people of a ruler yet to come would destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end would come like a flood, a covenant with many. The ruler would confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. But in the middle of this 7, he would put an end to sacrifice and offerings. And on the wing of the temple, he would set up an abomination that causes desolation. The prophecy pointed to times of restoration and desolation. It foretold the coming of the Messiah and his subsequent sacrifice, the renewal of the covenant, and the emergence of a new ruler who would bring about destruction once again. Stunned by the depth and gravity of this revelation, Daniel sought to understand its significance. The pieces of God's grand design for his people, for the holy city of Jerusalem, and indeed for all of humanity, were beginning to come together in Daniel's heart and mind. Chapter 10. Daniel's Vision of the End Times. In the 3rd year of King Cyrus of Persia, a revelation came to Daniel, who was known by his Babylonian name, Belteshazzar. Despite the clarity of the vision, its meaning was deeply troubling to him, leaving him in mourning for 3 weeks. He ate no rich food, consumed no meat or wine, and did not anoint himself. By the banks of the Tigris River, while Daniel was in a deep state of reflection, he lifted his eyes and saw a startling vision. A man unlike any other stood before him. He was dressed in linen with a belt of fine gold. His body was like beryl, his face shone like lightning, his eyes were like blazing torches, his arms and legs gleamed like polished bronze, and his voice resonated like a multitude. Daniel was not alone, but those who accompanied him did not see the vision. An overwhelming dread took hold of them, and they fled to hide. Thus, Daniel was left alone to witness this great apparition. Overwhelmed, he fell into a deep sleep, face down to the ground. A hand touched him, setting him trembling on his hands and knees. "Daniel," the voice spoke, "you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you and stand up, for I have now been sent to you." Gaining strength, Daniel stood, though he still trembled. The heavenly being continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. From the first day you purposed to humble yourself and seek understanding, your words were heard, and I have come in response." The being revealed that he had been resisted by the Prince of Persia for 21 days. Only with the help of Michael, one of the chief princes, was he able to break through. His purpose was to reveal what would happen to Daniel's people in the days to come, for the vision concerned the distant future. For days, Daniel received visions of wars, mighty kings, betrayals, and the role of Michael, the great prince who protects God's people. He saw the rise and fall of empires and the tumultuous events that would unfold before the ultimate deliverance of God's chosen ones. By the end of the revelations, Daniel was left weak and breathless. The heavenly being, with a touch, strengthened him, encouraging him to be at peace and to take heart from the knowledge bestowed upon him. The being would return to continue the battle against the Prince of Persia and later, the Prince of Greece. With a final word of encouragement for Daniel to hold on to the understanding and to stand firm in his faith, the vision ended. Though Daniel was given insight into the future, the weight of the knowledge bore heavily on him. He understood that trials and tribulations awaited, but so did deliverance and redemption. With a heart both heavy and hopeful, Daniel recorded these visions, entrusting them to future generations as a testament of God's unwavering plan for his people. Chapter 11. Michael's Final Battle. As the revelations to Daniel continued, they began to uncover an intricate tapestry of battles, alliances, betrayals, and the rise and fall of kings. This chapter seemed to stretch across generations, shaping the course of empires and the fates of countless souls. In the vision, the angel spoke of a mighty king of Persia who would stand against 3 kings, only to be succeeded by a far more powerful ruler. This 4th king would wield great power and riches, stirring up all against the kingdom of Greece. Then, out of the northern territories, a fierce king would arise, his dominion stretching across vast lands. With an insatiable hunger for power, he would enter the beautiful land, seeking to expand his empire, toppling fortified cities and mighty rulers in his wake. But he would be met with resistance. A king of the south, bolstered by a strong alliance, would march out in full force against the king of the north, leading to epic battles. There would be betrayals within the royal families, attempts to broker peace through marriages, but all in vain. The heart of kings is fickle and trust is a rare commodity. The king of the north, relentless in his ambition, would amass an even greater army, sweeping through countries like a flood. Many would fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon would be delivered. Rumors from the east and the north would disturb him, leading him to unleash his fury upon the beautiful land. Yet he would meet his end with no one to help him. As the narrative of these kings and their vast empires continued to unfurl, the angel revealed a time of unparalleled distress. It would be a time when the archangel Michael, protector of Daniel's people, would arise. A great conflict would ensue, a battle spanning the heavens and the earth. But amidst the turbulence, everyone whose name was found written in the book would be delivered. Many who sleep in the dust would awake, some to everlasting life and others to shame and eternal contempt. Those who are wise would shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars forever. The angel implored Daniel to seal up the words of the scroll until the time of the end, hinting at a period where knowledge would increase and many would journey far and wide searching for understanding. And while the wicked would remain wicked, the righteous would be purified, refined, and made spotless, all in preparation for the appointed time. For Daniel, it was a daunting realization that the great battles were not just of empires and territories, but of cosmic proportions. It was a battle between light and darkness, good and evil, and the stakes were the souls of humanity. But even in the gravest of revelations, hope shimmered, for in the end righteousness would prevail, and God's chosen ones would shine brilliantly against the night. Chapter 12. Understanding the visions. As the visions began to wane, Daniel found himself both overwhelmed and deeply perplexed. The scope of what he had witnessed spanned centuries, touching not just on earthly kingdoms but the very heavens themselves. The cosmic dance between light and darkness, and the final confrontation involving Michael, resonated deeply within him. Standing on the banks of the Tigris, Daniel looked to the angelic messenger, seeking clarity. "My lord," he implored, "what will the outcome of all this be?" The heavenly being raised his hands to the sky and then to the earth, as if binding an oath between heaven and earth. "These words are sealed until the time of the end," he replied solemnly. The angel spoke of a time when many would be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked would continue in their wickedness. Those with insight would understand the times, even as many would still wander in confusion. Then, before Daniel stood two more figures, one on each bank of the river. One of them asked the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The man raised both hands to the heavens. "It will be for a time, times, and half a time," he replied. "When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." The cryptic response only deepened Daniel's sense of wonder and urgency. "My lord," Daniel inquired again, "what will happen after that?" The angel's response was equally enigmatic, speaking of periods marked by 1,290 days, and then 1,335 days. Yet he offered Daniel a glimmer of hope and guidance. "Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. Yet even with this hint, Daniel realized that he would not live to see the full unfolding of these events. "As for you," the angelic figure said gently to him, "go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance." With those final words, the vision faded, leaving Daniel standing by the river, the weight of the future heavy on his shoulders. He realized he might never fully grasp the intricacies of what he had been shown, but he took solace in the promises whispered throughout: a future of hope, the eventual triumph of righteousness, and the assured inheritance awaiting him. He committed himself to recording all he had witnessed, passing on the knowledge and the hope contained within to future generations. And while many mysteries remained, Daniel's faith in the Most High was unwavering. In his time, all things would be revealed. This concludes the story of Daniel. Make sure to see the rest of the content created by Bible Intelligence.